Okay, Luke. So now that we have talked a little bit about confidentiality and informed consent, I want to hear all about you, about your life, and kind of help you work through, why you're here today. So tell me a little bit about your childhood.
Um, I grew up in a pretty, I would say, a pretty normal home. My parents were both from poor families, but they both, got college degrees, and um, they both worked jobs, and I had, pretty much everything. I had everything that I needed 100%, and pretty much most of what I wanted. And my parents were wonderful, wonderful parents. They both loved me and my sister, um, and my father had some anger stuff. He was severely abused as a child, and I think maybe by today's standards, I would he'd probably get a case with DCBS, because of some bruises and stuff he'd put on my legs with a belt. But I wasn't confused about whether my father loved me or not. I just knew that he got angry sometimes about things, and um, but other than that, I had a pretty normal childhood. Um, Other than, and I had some traumatic stuff happen, when I was about 4. I was actually molested, um, that caused some issues in the way I formed relationships with people and stuff. um, you know um, but yeah, my parents were very loving. It was someone outside the family, and we moved from that area to get away. And I was really good at sports, and kind of excelled in sports, and really liked doing schoolwork. But um, it, it is what it is. I love sports, and sports kind of kept me, you know, in school and doing enough of what they wanted me to do so that I can continue to play sports. But yeah, never had a problem really making friends. And um, I had some social awkwardness that I think had to do with what happened to me when I was 4. Like I said, in the way I developed relationships with people. But yeah, I came from a pretty loving home. So
Okay. So I hear, a lot of what you've told me. I want to dig a little bit deeper,
mhm.
with some of the things that you told me. Tell me a little bit about your parents and your relationship with your parents.
um, well, my mother, she's a clinical psychologist, and my mother was always a free thinker, and mom was mom's kind of like I had a really neat sort of experience growing up, because my parents, there's a lot of diplomacy in my home. My mother was a liberal Democrat, and my father was a conservative Republican, and they loved each other to death, and they never fought. So it was new to me a few years ago when this thing started heating up and everybody was hating each other because of opposing views. But because I was never used to that. um, but yeah, my mother's great. I think I'm a little bit more like her. I think I'm a little bit more of a tolerant person, and you know, and I think I kind of see the world through her eyes. My father, I love him to death, but again, he's pretty angry, and I did get a lot of his anger kind of passed on to me. And I think that's another reason why later on in life I kind of struggle with or substance use disorders and stuff like that. But my relationship with my father's great. He was super supportive, and loved going and watching my games. Well, all my family did. They super supportive of everything I ever did, and I still talk to them today, on pretty much daily. They're my biggest fans. They're my biggest supporters in the things that I do, and yeah, I love them both dearly.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about your parents' parenting styles. It kind of sounds like, you said that your mom was more of a free thinker. You feel like you see the world from her eyes more, and, dad was a little bit stricter,
Hmm.
and had a little bit of anger.
Yeah,
Tell me about what happened when you would get in trouble when you were younger. Who would be the one to discipline you?
Dad was the disciplinary. Dad was always the disciplinary. And I don't want to come off like he was just, a complete ass. He put up with a lot. I wasn't an easy child, to get along with. I had a lot of energy and was, super hyper, and, kind of made their life a living hell if I didn't get what I want, spoiled kind of kid. Um, but dad was tolerant too. It's just, there were certain things that he didn't put up with. And when he was done and he didn't want to hear it anymore and he didn't want to argue and he didn't want to fight, he'd put his foot down. And if I, crossed that line, then, he'd let me know. Mom was a little bit more, she'd tell you what she wanted you to hear. And then if you either followed it or you didn't. And, she didn't waste a whole lot of time, like, arguing that, but she would be the first to kind of like, when I was upset or like, really kind of in pain and stuff, she'd be the first to come and like, comfort me and, hey, look, you're upset, but this is what we've said and this is what we want you to do. And, I think you can do better. There was a lot of encouragement. Mom was more, I'd say, empowering, and dad was more, the authoritarian or the authoritative parent, but it was good. It's a nice blend, I think I got some strengths from both of them. So,
Okay.
mhm.
And then I know that you said that you have a sister as well. Are you the oldest child?
I am the oldest child.
Okay. And then do you just have one sister?
Yes. My mother actually had a stillborn between me and my sister. So there should have been a middle child, but it was a stillborn. So yeah.
Okay. I'm sure that that must have been hard for your family at the time.
I can remember it was difficult for my mother. I was very young. I think it was not long after the event that happened to me. I was about 4. And then my sister was born when I was about 6. Um, yeah, I do remember my mother being very depressed and, kind of down for a little bit of time when I was younger. But yeah,
And then I noticed that you, mentioned the incident that happened when you were 4. I don't want to go into too much detail about it right now. That's for definitely a longer session.
sure.
Um, but it seemed like it was pretty traumatizing.
Yeah, it's weird. I know that molestation, sexual assault, and those things, you hear them, and I automatically assume, you know, that it's that moment that was a traumatic moment. And I think for me, in retrospect, it wasn't there. I wasn't, physically forced into something. Um, I was coerced as a young child, and there wasn't pain associated with it or fear. It was harmless on my end as being an innocent participant in some sick person's, you know. Um, and so, if reflectively, the moment wasn't traumatizing to me. What was traumatizing to me was being a 4-year-old and being innocence lost sort of thing, right? And knowing about things that a 4-year-old should have no business knowing about. And again, it affected the way I viewed people, and the way I viewed relationships, especially when I got a little bit older and started like intimate, partner relationships with women and or girls, but and women when I got older. But it's weird. It could be, like I said, the trauma came from my difficulty to make meaningful connections with people and establish healthy relationships. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
So you mentioned several times that this event has, led to some struggles in relationships. Tell me about some of the relationships that you've had that you find that were struggling.
Um, I with intimate, relationships with girlfriends, and with, um, as I got older, there was an emphasis on, the physicality of that relationship and what was being, received and given, and that took priority. And I know there's a lot of that, and just, kind of, teenager stuff. But I think mine was driven by something a little bit deeper. If you know what I mean. Um, it wasn't just, hormones and coming of age. With my stuff was a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper rooted, and it kind of tied into my self-worth. Um, and I quickly felt alienated from women because I wasn't able to establish sort of, reciprocity in that relationship. I was looking for things that they weren't anywhere near looking for. Um, because I had this deep rooted thing in me that was how people connected in a relationship, right? And I didn't know much about, getting to know someone and knowing who they are, and caring about their character and their ability to carry on intelligent conversation and enjoying things together and laughing and all the things that make a good, partnership and relationship. Mine was, kind of subjugated or falsely defined in my mind that this is what a relationship is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hearing a lot of stuff that happened in your childhood. This event that your dad, his anger,
Yeah.
and then I'm also hearing some really good things about support from your mom and your dad, and so I'm hearing some things that were troubling in your childhood that kind of followed you through adulthood. That's why you're here today.
Mm-hmm.
Are going to work on developing a treatment plan to help you work through that trauma and cope with things that you previously endured and try to have some better outcomes.
Sounds good.